Welcome to Main Street Podcast, an opportunity to talk to Idaho's elected leaders about the issues that matter to you. Welcome. It is Idaho Main Street Podcast, and we are here with one of our favorite legislators, Representative Marco Erickson out of District 33. So for those that don't know where that might fall on the map, this is a pretty easy one. Where's your district?
Right in the center of Idaho Falls.
Perfect. And you've been in the Idaho House of Representatives for 2 terms now.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, we first met, I don't know if you remember, but when we first met, it was when you were getting ready to run for that seat.
Yes, I remember.
And I remember coming away from that meeting thinking, not only this might be the nicest guy I've ever met, but
thank you.
I've never met a politician like this guy before. So I'm really excited about the conversations we're going to get into. The listeners today are going to get to see a whole different side of Representative Erickson. So let's start with the beginning. You kind of have a unique story. You grew up in some tragedy that kind of shaped your future. Lost your father when you were 8.
Yes,
to a pretty tragic accident. Why don't, if you're comfortable, share with us a little bit of that experience and how that led you into public service.
Well, so it was a drunk driving accident, and my dad was at fault. And bad things were going on. I didn't even know some of the things. My mom has revealed things to me later in life that I didn't know as a child. But when that happened, I was a young kid, and I just wanted to help other people not experience that. Not just that, but all the trauma that comes with alcohol, drugs, witnessing all those things that I got to see. So luckily, I had a lot of healthy adults around me, a lot of opportunities. I grew up in Boise, right? So there were people there that were like shaping me and got me involved in things that made a difference in the world. So I started doing drug prevention when I was literally around 8 or 9 years old. Got involved in the community.
What did that look like, drug prevention at that age?
So in that time, in that era, it was Nancy Reagan had this big just say no. It was her thing.
Yeah.
And we later learned through science that it wasn't a very effective campaign overall in the whole scheme of science of drug change and how we do it in a community approach. But for me, it was one of the first ways that it got me engaged in that work. And so it was highly successful for me because I already didn't want to do those things ever because of what I saw growing up. And it just helped me have a good start, So we would march in parades in Meridian. We would do community cleanup projects, things like that.
But you probably felt, especially looking back, and we'll talk about what you're doing now with at risk, but you were probably right there on the edge of it could have gone either way between being a force for good in the community or finding yourself in some serious habits, trouble, things like that.
I don't know what was different about me. I was very resilient. I did not want to do any of those negative things. I got in a little bit of trouble. I was a rambunctious kid, no adult supervision. So we would just kind of do our thing without parents watching over us. We got in a little bit, but nothing major. But my brother and my sister, they had to do up a different direction. My cousins, a lot of our relatives, some of them ended up in prison. Some of them are not alive anymore. So I kind of got to see all of that. Thank goodness I made a choice to go the right direction because now I don't know the impact I've had on the world, but it's been huge. I know as there's a lot of families and people I've made a difference in policy work and things I do every day.
Let's talk about that impact. So not only at a young age did you avoid falling into some of those pitfalls, but it shaped your career of where you are now. So we know that our legislators, we have a part-time legislature where they spend a period of time in Boise doing work, but your full-time job, you actually work with at-risk teens, right?
Yeah, I call them teens. We call them at-promise kids.
At-promise.
Because the word at-risk is so negative.
Yeah.
So we're like youth of promise. These kids are amazing. People just don't always give them the opportunity to see. And I see their potential, and I try to find that the first day, bring it out of them. And I have so many stories. I can tell hundreds of stories about these kids and the differences their lives are. There was one particular girl I think about right now. She's still in our program, but 2 years ago, she was vaping and causing all kinds of chaos. She looked horrible. Her face, everything about her looked depressed. Now you wouldn't even recognize that kid ever had a background like that. And she talks about it all the time. So we have several good stories like that.
And what is it that you do that helps these at-promise teens change their lives?
I tell you what, the most thing we do is love them like a normal person. We not in an inappropriate way, but we just love them, and we build relationships with them that they're kind of often overlooked. So we give them an opportunity to be themselves, to be loved, and have adults pay attention to them that are healthy. Adults who just say, hey, how was your weekend? Oh, you had a hard time at home. Oh man, tell me about that. And they just get to talk and share their life with us.
I think we all can think of people that we went to school with, people in our community, cousins, people that fall in that category of they don't have a community that is supporting them necessarily, or they're struggling to make that connection. And so what your folks do is you create that community where they can feel supported and loved and open to connect.
Yeah, and we build a place, and in the place there's structure, right? So they don't just get to come in there and just be free. We have rules and regulation, and there's cameras watching that, so they know there's no way they can get away with stuff. So the kids who are trying to go there and just do things they don't normally stick around long because they know that's not going to work.
Yeah.
We make them go to classes, enrichment. We build them up. We want to build their future. So we give them like I'm working with kids right now, teach them how to play guitar. And another group I'm teaching how to build their own business, showing them how to use the Idaho Secretary of State's website to go and register a business, how to build a logo. Then I have another group I'm working on community drug prevention efforts, where next week is Red Ribbon Week, October 23rd through the 31st. We go and we work with schools. We hype up the kids. We do this rally, and the community is celebrating that lifestyle of, hey, we're happy, we're drug free.
That's fantastic. A lot of good stuff coming from there. Talk to us a little bit about how you went from being involved in the community of helping these kids to thinking, you know what, I'm going to go put my name on some signs and I'm going to be a politician.
I still don't call myself a politician. I call myself a statesman. I was always interested in serving the public in various capacities. And so my entire career, from the time I was a little boy, the age 8, it was always a public service career. It wasn't meant to make me a lot of money. I spent 14 years working in mental health in the field, did every role I could do in drug treatment and, mental health, building my own agency, doing all that work, and then watching and helping with policy consulting, going and working for the state government when I left for Nevada, came back to Idaho, and I said, listen, it's my time to run for legislature, because that was kind of the capstone of the work I was doing. If I'm in the legislature, now I can really set the policy and use all my life experience, all the gamut, the whole round circle of being a provider, helping consumers, looking out for the state's interests, understanding the federal government laws, bring all that into a perspective that just wasn't in the legislature. I was like, they need me. And so that's what I said, I'm going to run. I mean, why not me? If America's still America, the small guy who came out of nowhere can do this.
Yeah.
And I did. And it was such a great gift to be able to do and continue to serve right now.
Well, and there's a lesson out there to the kids you work with and to anyone listening that it doesn't matter the home you grew up in, doesn't matter the difficulties and challenges. Put your mind to something. America is still America, and you can be elected to public office.
Yep. And you have to have good, positive choices that you're making throughout your life. That was one thing when I decided to run. People were asking me, do you have any demons in your closet? And it's like, no, you're not going to find anything. Because I didn't do a lot of things. I didn't do things that would get me in trouble. I always was a servant.
Yeah.
And I said, you can find anyone that ever knew me. You can go back in time and they're going to all say something positive about their, and that I was just there to serve. I still am. But I'll continue doing that as long as the people let me do it.
And as you serve, you have a very different approach than a lot of leaders in the political public scene. So when we first met, the first thing you said is, look, I am not political. And when we were talking,
yes,
you're 2 terms in and you still remind me, hey, I am still not political. You're a servant, you're a public servant, but you don't have special interests or secret agendas. You don't have smoke-filled backroom deals. And when you're in Boise, you don't really make enemies or backbite any of your colleagues over there. How has that approach been received in the Capitol?
Yeah, it was funny because the first term I went in there, I got feedback and people were like, we don't know what his agenda is. And they're used to having people that have either one faction or the other.
Sure.
I fit in with everybody. I've always been, I think, what you call a floater. I fit in with the groups who are doing the work that matters, that we need to do, at the time. There's certain things that just need done. And sometimes that's some of the things that align with one group and the other. And we just go do it. That's what I'm focused on. I think the general public just wants us to do good work.
Mm-hmm. Now, and this is no dig on any of your colleagues, because it's just your personality and your focus has allowed you to just be very open, very loving, and focusing, like you say, on the good work. what are some of the most important things that you have been doing over in the state capitol?
Well, my dream from day one was, I called it the inverted V.
Okay.
And that means there was a lot more money and energy being spent on the crisis response after a problem occurred. And I wanted to invert that and find resources that could create systems. The entire system would be focused on stopping the stuff before it happens.
And now, walk us through the context here. When we're talking, are we talking a mental health crisis? What kind of crises are we talking about?
Any of the crises. So that would be substance abuse, mental health, but things that I see a lot in the world that are affecting people. So that helps us to and education, making sure those kids are being caught early, not having people go in the prison system.
Sure.
The whole system, the trouble system, the things that we spend a lot of money in that are not always necessary, including entitlement programs. There's ways we can stop those problems, like for example, Project Launch, which was a lot of people don't like, but I love it because it gives the opportunity for some young people to get an advanced education quicker, and then they won't be needing some of those entitlement programs. Sure. They'll pay taxes, a lot of great things.
So your approach has been, look, rather than try to treat the problems, let's invest more in trying to prevent some of these problems.
And so as a result, there's been millions and millions of dollars invested in mental health and into new things like assessment centers, early detection. And we're just getting started. Some of these things are just getting off the ground and it's already having results. The assessment centers across the state have already had, the last report I had, there was over 500 families served in them, and they're in the first year of implementation. Some of them just opened last month. Right? None of them have been open an entire year yet. So it's just that's just getting started. And as people know about these things that are early, we catch things before they start. Like a kid's truant from school, they ask us for help. We go in and we help the family meet the needs of what's going on. How can we support you?
Yeah.
Just little things like that, rather than entering them into state systems like child protection service. Can we divert that? It's a possibility. And if we can, we want to do that on the community level before it ever escalates to a more expensive thing.
Yeah, right. So there's a lot of fiscal conservatism in this and trying to determine how are we going to use these taxpayer dollars in a way that's actually efficient.
Yeah, because my vision, I don't see 2 years ahead or the next election cycle. I don't think like that. I'm thinking 15, 20 years down the road, what we do now, the policies we make can make an impact for families for generations. And someday I'll look back and go, hey, I helped with that.
Yeah.
No big deal.
So you mentioned not thinking short term. Are you ever concerned that the time's going to come where you're going to get a tough election and not be able to get reelected because, 2 years or 1 year came and they came after you because you were thinking far ahead?
I don't think about that, honestly, because I feel that the work I do will speak for itself. And if there comes a time when the public says, you know what, we prefer some other candidate over you, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Because I didn't get in this business to be a lifelong person sitting in that spot. I did it to serve the public. And if they think my time as a servant for them is done, then that's okay with me. But I would hope they would kick me around a little bit longer, because there's some really awesome things we're working on. It'll take a few years, and we have to meet certain thresholds before we can do the next step. So there's things that are 5 to 10 year projects. And at the end of that, then hopefully I can say, yeah, I've done all the things I set out to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a brilliant outlook. And I think it's refreshing. And it's probably why you have so much support with the voters, is because you're not pandering. You're trying to get the job done, which is great. You mentioned some things you have coming. I'd love to get into those. But first, you brought up launch, which we've talked about with some of your other colleagues. That was a big priority for the governor, right? You supported launch, correct?
I did, yes.
Now, how is it working with the governor? You've supported him in the past in his elections. You've endorsed him. You've been behind Governor Little. And launch, of course, was a big initiative for him. What's it like? Give us some insights into our governor.
Well, I could tell you this. When I first met him, he got stuck in a thing he didn't want to be doing, which was this crazy pandemic, right? And he told me, he's like, yeah, I wish I were able to do these other things because he and I were aligned on some of these projects with mental health, the Behavioral Health Council, the things that we're going. And I told him, yeah, I'm gonna want to do some of the same things. Yeah. And he just that first couple of years, it was awkward for all of us, you know.
Yeah, a lot of different stuff being thrown at us.
Now we're starting to see the fruits of what his passion was, and so I get excited when we can make a difference and we can do new things that haven't been done. And that actual solve real problems, keeps a workforce here in Idaho. Helps the youth get out of poverty.
Yeah.
So many great things.
I love that. So let's talk future. What are some of the big projects that you're looking forward to tackling?
Right now, I'm working with the Millennium Funds project, and that's we have $15 to $20 million to allocate across the state of Idaho, and they've been doing that for a lot of years. But last year, we decided to move that back into prevention, kind of like I talked about with the inverted V. And now we're just putting a scientific approach to it. So we're really analyzing the need in Idaho and where to place the resources. That includes school resource officers and drug-free school coordinators and after-school programs and time out of school. So we're covering and what to do with the parents and educating parents. And so there's this massive approach to that in a scientific manner. So it's not just willy-nilly, we throw money here and here. We actually are going to have data that's driving the decision making, and it's just a better approach than in the past where they would just throw like $5,000 to each district and really didn't have a way to measure the true impact to the kids. Now we're going to have better collaboration across the board with different agencies in the state. And better connection to a particular goal and objective. And then there'll be more resources put into individual areas that need it specifically.
Yeah. I know before we started recording, we were talking about you had meetings this morning regarding that. Your calendar is constantly full.
Oh, man, it's crazy.
And as a busy guy who's got so much going, I mean, I have to ask, you're a father,
I am.
A husband, so you got an incredible wife and 5 kids at home. Is it 4 boys and a girl?
Yes, 4 boys and a girl.
How do you manage all of this stuff and still be Marco the dad?
I have figured out how to commingle the different tasks I have. So, with my wife, I'll bring her to political things and we get to spend some time together.
Yeah.
And she's kind of like there with me, and it's not her favorite thing to do, but she does that. And so it gives us some time. Or my kids, I have a teen center. And they have classes they're interested in. So for years, my boys helped build that as teen leaders, got them involved in leadership. One of my sons served as a page at the House of Representatives last year.
Wow.
Yeah, so I get to find a way to be the dad and also help them in their career steps in the future. I've been able to public speak nationally with my own children at some events. We were with the U.S. Surgeon General 3 years ago in Florida speaking, and my sons were with me. And they were speaking as the youth representatives. And it's really just cool to get to do that as a dad.
So there's a message out there to parents to say, even though you're raising kids, there's opportunities to get involved in the community and still not sacrifice time with your families.
Yeah. Also in my church, I was able to be their young men leader, right? So that was really nice for years. That was my role.
And I've been meaning to ask about that. So you're a man of faith. And I was curious what role your faith plays as you go to Boise and vote, and to what extent does those beliefs factor in?
I mean, your faith creates a foundation with who you are. Like it makes it easy to make the positive choices, and so you take them into account as part of who you are to the core. But there's a lot of factors that determine what the work we do, including some of the things our people are asking for. Mental health is a really serious problem across the nation. Healthcare in general is so expensive, right?
Right.
So that's what I try to be an expert in. My master's degree is psychology. I've obviously worked in treatment space, but I've also spent a lot of time in the healthcare space and studying how to change systems. Mm-hmm. And so my energy has been really focused on the systems. And the more I get in there, the more people realize, oh yes, this guy knows what he's talking about, and he can do some changes without having to disrupt the services that are provided to the patients and the people receiving those services. Also taking care of the provider, the people out there doing the work. So it's a big, nationwide, it's a huge thing. Yeah. A lot of the budget is taken up by that.
And not something one man can carry alone. So as you're in Boise, who are some of the people that you work with in, whether it's on the other side in the Senate or in the House, who are some of the people you work with or some of the people you look to for advice or counsel?
Well, it just depends on what the issue is. I look at the experts who know a particular topic the most, and I'll look to them. Like, for example, there's things for when you're dealing with water. That's not my expertise.
Sure.
There's certain people that know that. Scott Bedke knows a lot about water, right? And Stephanie Mickelson knows a lot about. So, if you're dealing with a topic like that, it's better to just go to the people who live that world. And then on mental health issues, guess what they do? They send them to me. Right. And if it's an education, there's certain people that have been, we had people that had been superintendents of school or principals, so we talk to them and talk about how it affects their work. And you got to collaborate with people.
And the picture you're painting is that the legislature might not be broken, that there actually is a lot of collaboration and you guys do work together.
Oh, we talk a lot, and sometimes, so for example, you'll see a committee. The Judiciary and Rules Committee gets really busy with a lot of very tough topics. And we'll spend hours and hours behind the scenes collaborating with each other, talking, sharing conversations, and having private meetings, going over things together. That takes a lot of work. And it's all worth it because at the end, when the time to come vote is, we've had a lot of contemplation time to make a decent decision. And it's not always easy.
Right.
It's a hard part.
How do you stay so positive? I think even through this interview, as we've gone in, there's tough issues that you have to deal with. There's tough issues in the world right now. We're dealing with war in the Middle East. We're dealing with a nation's capital and Congress absolutely broken. How do you stay so positive and optimistic?
I think it's part of my personality. For one, I choose the happiness over sadness, but there's always someone out there that's encouraging me. Once in a while, I'll get an email, or sometimes a lot of emails back to back that are like, hey, you did great. Thank you for doing that. And those things just are like much better than the negative ones. The negative ones, you always think of what's that person going through? What's in their mind? They may not know what I know. So I think of it from an empathetic standpoint rather than an angry standpoint. That's just how I get through it.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And for those that don't know, you actually have unique musical talents. You mentioned before teaching some of these promised teens the guitar.
Yes.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into it and some of the gigs? I've seen you perform many times. Mostly I'll be your groupie at the fair. I always come and watch you out there.
Oh, you've seen me at the fair. That's funny.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about your musical talent?
I just, when I was young, I performed in bars and I play with my uncle's band. So I'd be 14, 15, 16. And this is another thing that helped me stay away from drugs because I'd see all the behavior of those adults and go, man, you're 40 and you're acting like that? I don't want to do that. All right. I want to do something different. And so, I performed from the time I was really little. I wrote songs. I was 15 years old when I wrote my first real song that I got to perform at a wedding. And I love songwriting and I love performing. So over time, I don't claim to be the best musician. I'm a pretty decent songwriter. People can ask me to write a song about anything and I'm able to do that. But I like to perform and I enjoy sharing musical talent. And one time I wanted to do that as a profession.
Yeah.
Right? But I think I had another calling in public service. And so I was grateful to go that direction too.
Yeah. Well, it's neat you get so many opportunities to still perform.
Yeah, you have to balance your life. That's part of I joke about, I get to dabble in some of my hobbies that I find great joy in doing in peace.
Yeah.
And writing music. And I usually write them about, I've written songs about suicide, which is a really tough, and people relate to the work. I've written songs about foster care, right? Things the kids go through. And then lots of fun love songs, and religious songs too. So it kind of balances it out.
If you had to pick a couple of your absolute favorite famous artists, who would you choose?
Oh my goodness. I like the 90s country sound. So people like George Strait definitely is one of them.
The king.
Yeah, got to have George Strait in there because he was a huge influence on me. Randy Travis was another one.
Okay.
Big for me when I was young. Yeah, those two.
And the one you left off, the correct answer.
What, Garth Brooks?
Garth Brooks.
Yeah, Garth was I've gone to many of his shows and enjoyed them very much.
He puts on a show.
He does a great job. And he connects with his audience. So even I was pretty close at the last one in Salt Lake. I tipped my hat to him. He saw me and tipped his hat back. That was the coolest thing.
That's incredible. So some fun questions that we'd love to ask the guests. The first one, this is a really tough one for you, being representing Idaho Falls. We always like to ask them, what's their favorite place to eat in their district?
Oh my goodness. I like I always tell people go over to the Bee's Knees.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's just different. It's small. You wouldn't expect to be a restaurant there, and it's something unique to Idaho Falls.
They have something on their menu that I haven't tried yet, and we may end up getting like bleeped out for this, but it's called a slutty brownie. And I'm really curious what that entails.
I don't know. I haven't had that. I did.
We'll have to share a slutty brownie sometime.
My
We'll tell
goodness.
everyone what it's like.
Yeah, I have no idea. I didn't even know they had that.
It's got to be rich. I think that's okay. So Bee's Knees is a big recommendation. Another question we like to ask: if there was one book in the world that you'd recommend everybody ought to read, what might it be?
Oh my! I don't know. That's there's too many amazing books. But my favorite when I was young was the Chronicles of Narnia, C.S. Lewis work. And because there's so many parallels to the modern world and some of the things. So I just love those characters and the development of the characters. From my kids, I don't know. There's so many books in our house. Yeah. Thousands of books in my house.
C.S. Lewis is a great recommendation. Now, if there's one political leader that you really look up to or try to emulate?
You know, I never really emulated one particular political leader.
Yeah.
I just look at the good that they're doing, and I just do my thing here, right? So I didn't really have an influencer like that. Reagan was a good one, but there were some things that we could change too. So I don't.
Well, anyone that's met you, Marco, knows that is absolutely the accurate question. There is no other political leader like you. You're one of a kind.
I find that interesting. I mean, I hope that in America, I know there's a ton of people just like me. They just maybe didn't have the courage to do that. I just stepped out and said, I'm going to try that. We're able to work together in a lot of ways across the country in a more collaborative manner, and it's civil, right?
Yeah.
And we can get a lot done. And you can be totally different politically in your views, but you can still work in America and get things done. I still believe in that. Sometimes I see the two polarized sides and the struggles, and even in our own party sometimes.
Right.
And you just, if you work together, you can achieve amazing things, and you can fix those problems.
Amen, brother. Amen. So we started this interview talking about, the difficult journey you've gone through and losing your dad at a young age, talked about how you were kind of brought into a community and how that shaped your profession and the good you're doing with these promised teens. I
love you figured that out.
I'm a slow learner, but I'll get there. We talked about your long-term outlook, your positive approach to the legislature, stepping up and running despite your background, and coming in and wanting to contribute. Talked about launch and your support of the governor and the great things he's doing. We've gone through a lot of things here, from favorite books and artists to just the fact that you're different and you have a good approach in things. What would be the last thing you'd like to share to anybody listening today?
Hey, just got to be you. You are who you are, and you're enough.
You're enough. It's a great one. Representative, we're going to have you back, and we're going to have to dig in more to some of the work that you've got coming up as you tackle the mental health crisis and everything else going on. We really do appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much.
Marco Erickson, District 33, straight out of Idaho Falls. Appreciate you being here. Till next time.